Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating plunge into the world of NVIDIA. And this isn't just, about a company making computer chips. It feels like it's about a force really shaping the future of tech right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about this. NVIDIA started out making graphics cards for video games, right? And recently, it actually surpassed Apple in market valuation. Just for a moment, but still.
Wow.
That's a huge shift. Tells quite a story.
It really, really does. And to understand how a company that, started in graphics got here, you kind of have to look at the whole picture. NVIDIA or NVDA, they've evolved way beyond just graphics. They're now this global tech powerhouse, really at the forefront of AI hardware and, importantly, the software platforms, too.
Right, this software.
Yeah, they design everything from these incredibly powerful GPUs, the graphics processing units, to the APIs that data scientists and high-performance computing folks rely on. They even do whole system-on-a-chip units for things like autonomous cars.
So it's a whole package.
Yeah, it is. We're talking a market cap in the trillions of dollars now, over 36,000 employees, nearly 40 countries. And just for context, market cap, that's basically the total value of all their shares out there. Gives you a sense of the company's size and worth.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission really in this deep dive is to get a handle on NVIDIA's journey, from the start to where they are now. We want to dig into the founding story, the key turning points, the core business, how they make money, the financials, who they're competing against, and, where they see themselves going. Think of it as your kind of fast track to understanding this super influential company. But obviously, no financial advice here.
Definitely not. And you absolutely have to talk about the link between NVIDIA's meteoric rise and this generative AI explosion we're seeing everywhere.
Can't avoid it.
No. Jensen Huang, the CEO, he famously called AI the most powerful technology force of our time. But what's really key, I think, is that NVIDIA's current position, it wasn't just sudden luck. It's the result of these deliberate, strategic choices and just relentless innovation that started way, way before generative AI became a household term.
Okay, so let's rewind then, go right back. Where did this whole journey actually begin? Take us back to the founding, those early days. Must have been challenging.
Yeah. So NVIDIA was founded April 5th, 1993. 3 founders. Jensen Huang, who's remarkably still the CEO today, Chris Malachowski, and Curtis Prime.
Still there after all this time.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Their initial seed money was just $40,000. And the famous origin story, you might have heard it, is that the idea was hashed out in a Denny's diner.
Huh. The Denny's story. Classic Silicon Valley.
Totally. The core idea back then. Revolutionize gaming, multimedia using advanced 3D graphics.
It's almost hard to picture a company this huge starting in a Denny's booth. But it wasn't smooth sailing, was it? I remember reading Huang himself had serious doubts early on.
Oh, absolutely. He apparently assessed their chances of success at approximately 0%, just because of the market hurdles, the tech complexity, the whole ecosystem wasn't really there yet. 0%. Wow.
Yeah. Getting that first funding was key. Don Ballantyne, the early investor, apparently just said, give this kid money and figure out if it's going to work.
Just bet on the person.
Seems like it. And very early on, they hit this massive, almost fatal technical roadblock.
Ah, the quadrilateral thing.
That's the one. The world of 3D graphics was kind of settling on using triangles for rendering, right? But NVIDIA made this big bet on using quadrilaterals instead.
Which sounds technical, but had huge implications.
Huge. Because then Microsoft announced DirectX, which quickly became the standard for games, would only support triangles.
Ouch. So NVIDIA was suddenly on the wrong side of the standard.
Completely. It put them in a terrible spot. So Jensen Huang made this incredibly tough, drastic call. They laid off about half the workforce.
Wow.
Yeah. And threw every single remaining resource into developing a new chip based on triangles. That became the Rivia 128.
Talk about betting the company. The pressure must have been immense. Unbelievable. The finances were apparently razor thin. They literally had cash for maybe one more month of salaries before the Rivia 128 launched.
1 month.
If that chip failed, NVIDIA was almost certainly done for.
But it didn't fail.
Nope. History went the other way. The Rivia 128 was a spectacular success. Sold 1 million units in just 4 months. Pulled them right back from the brink.
Incredible turnaround.
And that whole crisis, that near-death experience, it really forged the company culture. That sense of urgency, resilience. You still see echoes of it today. It wasn't just a blip. It shaped their DNA.
You can see how an experience like that would stick with you. Okay, fast forward a few years. We get to what many see as a really huge moment. The invention of the GPU.
Yes, 1999. The launch of the GeForce 256. And this wasn't just, a slightly better graphics card. It's widely considered the world's first actual graphics processing unit, the GPU.
The first GPU.
Yeah. And it was a watershed moment. It didn't just make games look way better. It fundamentally reshaped computer graphics. It fueled huge growth in PC gaming. And crucially, it laid the groundwork for NVIDIA's future dominance in visual computing and also, importantly, parallel computing. The GeForce really was a game changer.
Literally a game changer. But NVIDIA didn't stop there. Another huge inflection point seems to be CUD. Now, for listeners maybe not deep in the tech weeds, what exactly is CUD and why was it so strategically vital?
Right. CUDA, Compute Unified Device Architecture, launched in 2006.
Oh.
This is a really profound strategic pivot for NVIDIA, moving way beyond just graphics.
Okay.
CUDA is essentially a platform, a programming model that lets developers use the massive parallel processing power inside NVIDIA GPUs for tasks other than just drawing pixels on a screen.
So taking that graphics power and applying it elsewhere.
Exactly. Think complex scientific research, high-performance computing, and the big one, artificial intelligence.
Ah, the AI connection starts here.
Very much so. CUD was a game changer for the HPC, the high-performance computing world. Let researchers tackle problems they couldn't before. And it has since become the absolute de facto standard for tons of AI workloads.
The standard, that's key.
Hugely key. And this wasn't an accident. It was a very deliberate, very forward-thinking move by NVIDIA to build this whole software ecosystem around their hardware. That created massive switching costs, made it hard for people to jump to competitors. And this was before the big AI explosion.
So they were building the infrastructure for a revolution they saw coming.
It really looks that way. They weren't just building better graphics cards. They were laying the foundation for a whole new way of computing. Strategic genius, really.
That foresight is pretty incredible. And speaking of that AI revolution, the modern AI era, it seems like NVIDIA GPUs were right there at the ignition point.
Absolutely. 2012, NVIDIA GPUs were instrumental in the success of AlexNet. That was a deep learning model that just blew everyone away with its accuracy and image recognition.
AlexNet, right. I remember that.
That event is widely seen as the spark that really ignited modern AI.
Yeah.
And it firmly put NVIDIA right at the forefront of this whole transformation.
So from niche gaming graphics to the engine of the AI revolution in, less than 2 decades, quite the evolution.
Extraordinary.
And they didn't just do it through internal innovation, right? They made some pretty big acquisitions along the way, too.
Exactly. Organic innovation's obviously still crucial for them, but acquisitions have been a major tool to accelerate growth and grab capabilities in key areas. The biggest one, probably, was Mellanox Technologies in 2020. Cost about $6.9 billion.
Mellanox, what did they bring?
High-performance networking. They were leaders in things like InfiniBand and high-speed Ethernet, stuff that's absolutely vital for connecting huge clusters of GPUs together in AI supercomputers and big data centers.
Ah, the plumbing between the brains.
That's a great way to put it. You need these super-fast data highways when you're training massive AI models. So Mellanox really boosted NVIDIA's ability to offer the whole end-to-end data center package.
Makes sense. Any other key acquisitions that shaped them?
Yeah, a few others stand out. DeepMap in 2021, that was for high-def mapping for autonomous driving.
Okay, the car connection.
Right. Then Break Computing in 2022 for software to manage HPC and AI clusters. And just this year, 2024, they've snapped up a few AI software companies. Run.ai for workload orchestration, Brev.dev for AML cloud platforms, Octo AI for optimizing generative AI models.
So a real focus on the software side of AI recently.
Definitely. You see the pattern making these strategic leaps into critical adjacent areas, not just incremental stuff, future-proofing almost.
And speaking of big moves, we have to mention the one that didn't happen. The ARM Holdings acquisition attempt.
Oh yeah, the ARM deal. That fell through in 2022, mainly due to regulatory hurdles. But it really showed NVIDIA's massive ambition. They wanted to influence the fundamental architecture of computing itself, not just the accelerators.
A huge what if. So NVIDIA's reach now goes way beyond gaming. Data centers, AI, automotive, and this thing called Omniverse, digital twins, right? Virtual replicas.
Precisely. They've got their DGX systems, basically pre-built AI supercomputers. And Omniverse is this really ambitious platform for 3D design, real-time simulation, creating those digital twins of factories, cities, whatever.
Fascinating stuff.
This whole transformation into a full-stack AI and computing company is so significant that Morningstar, the investment research firm, actually upgraded NVIDIA's economic moat rating. basically saying their competitive advantages are stronger and more durable now.
And the results speak for themselves financially.
Oh, absolutely. Fiscal years 2024 and especially 2025 saw just unprecedented growth. Revenue more than doubled to $130.5 billion in FY25. Market cap soared past $3 trillion. Briefly became the second most valuable public company in the world.
Just staggering numbers cemented their place as a tech titan.
No question. These advantages they've built are powerful and very hard for competitors to dislodge right now.
It's been an incredible strategic journey. And seemingly right at the center of it all has been Jensen Huang, still there from day one.
Absolutely. Jensen Huang, co-founder, president, CEO. He's been the undeniable driving force. His vision, strategy, execution. He's got a deep electrical engineering background, worked at LSI Logic, AMD before NVIDIA, so he brought serious technical chops from the start.
Knew the tech inside out.
And he's widely credited with seeing the potential of AI and accelerated computing years before it went mainstream. Just incredible foresight. Beyond the tech depth, he's known for this resilient, sometimes unconventional leadership style.
Unconventional how? I've heard some stories.
Well, that internal motto.
Yeah.
Our company is 30 days from going out of business. That came directly from that Riva 128 crisis, that near-death experience.
These people on their toes.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
He also has this philosophy, something like greatness comes from suffering, emphasizing overcoming adversity. And his management structure is interesting, too. Reportedly has something like 60 direct reports, favors big group discussions over strict hierarchy.
60 direct reports. Wow. That's different.
Very different. But his impact is undeniable. Consistently ranked among the world's best CEOs, most influential people, he's just been absolutely central to NVIDIA's strategy, innovation, and success for 3 decades.
A truly fascinating history, shaped by near disaster, incredible foresight, consistent leadership. Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of how NVIDIA operates today. How do they actually make money? What are the main revenue streams?
Right. So their core business model has really shifted towards providing these whole accelerated computing platforms. They still make a lot from selling GPU hardware, of course, but software and services are becoming a much bigger piece of the pie. They report revenue across a few key segments. And as we mentioned, the data center segment is now by far the dominant engine.
Okay, let's break this down, starting with the powerhouse, data center.
Yeah, data center. This accounted for roughly 88% of their total revenue in fiscal year 2025. Just huge. And it's where the most explosive growth is happening.
88%. Wow. What's in that bucket?
It's their high-performance GPUs, like the Hopper H100, the new Blackwell GB200 systems. It's NVLink, that super-fast connection between GPUs. It's the Mellanox networking stuff, InfiniBand, Ethernet. It's also their DGX systems, those AI supercomputers in a box. Their Grace CPU, designed to work with the GPUs, and a growing pile of software. NVIDIA AI Enterprise, NVIDIA NIM for deploying models, DGX cloud services.
The whole AI infrastructure stack, basically.
Pretty much. And the numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
$115.2 billion in revenue in FY25. That's up 142% from the year before.
142% growth. Incredible. What's driving that?
It's the insatiable demand for AI training, teaching the models, and AI inference, using the models to make predictions. Demand from the big cloud providers, from enterprises building their own AI factories, from HPC research institutions. Everyone needs this compute power.
Truly staggering. Okay, what about their historical core, the gaming segment? Still important.
The gaming is definitely still important, even though it's a smaller slice of the revenue now. It brought in $11.4 billion in FY25, which is still up a healthy 9% year over year.
Still growing, then.
Yep. This includes their GeForce GPUs and the RTX series, soon with the Blackwell architecture, plus the software tech like DLSS, that AI-powered image upscaling, Reflex for low latency, GSY&C displays, the GeForce NW Cloud Gaming Service, the NVIDIA app. It's still where a lot of their core graphics innovation happens, and it keeps them connected to a huge user base.
Right, the gaming community. Okay, what about the other segments? Pro visualization, auto and robotics, OEM.
Professional visualization, that's for creative pros, engineers, designers. It did $1.9 billion in FY25, up 21%. Key things here are the NVIDIA RTX Pro GPUs and, increasingly, Omniverse for that industrial metaverse stuff.
Omniverse, again, seems strategically important.
Very. Then automotive and robotics, huge long-term potential. That hit $1.7 billion in FY25, up a whopping 55%.
55% growth there, too.
Yeah, that includes the NVIDIA Drive platform for ADAS and autonomous driving, the Jetson platform for robots, Isaac for robotic simulation. And finally, OEM and other is the smallest bit, $389 million in FY25. That's mostly specialized components for various other uses.
Okay, so it's crystal clear. Data center is the giant right now, driving almost everything. How do they actually price all these different products? Is it all premium?
Generally, yes. For the cutting-edge stuff, especially in AI and data center, they command premium pricing. It reflects their tech leadership, the massive demand, the value they deliver.
They know they have something people desperately need.
Pretty much. For more mainstream things like gaming GPUs, the pricing is more competitive, in line with that market. They also use tiered pricing for different performance levels and sometimes do bundles or promotions.
So if they're not always competing on price, especially at the high end, what's the core value proposition? Why do customers pay that premium?
It's multi-layered, really. First, just raw performance and relentless innovation. They're consistently pushing the boundaries in graphics and AI. Their mission, they say, is to solve problems ordinary computers can't.
Ambitious.
Second, it's that full-stack platform we talked about. Hardware GPUs, CPUs, networking tightly integrated with software, CEA, AI enterprise, Omniverse, SDKs, libraries. They even offer pre-trained models now like Llama Nematron. This whole package accelerates workflows, cuts time to market, makes things easy to use, creates that stickiness.
Makes sense. What else?
Third, they're just the engine for accelerated computing in AI and HPC, enabling faster insights, more efficient operations, entirely new capabilities for their customers. Fourth, Omniverse enabling those digital twins in the industrial metaverse. That's potentially transformative for manufacturing, architecture, virtual design, testing, optimization, huge cost savings, faster cycles.
The digital twin concept is powerful.
And finally, they're increasingly framing GPU acceleration as more sustainable computing. Higher throughput, potentially less energy per task compared to traditional CPUs for certain workloads. Blackwell architecture is a key example they point to there.
So performance, the full stack, enabling new capabilities, digital twins, and even a sustainability angle. Sounds comprehensive. Who are the main customers buying all this, and where are they? You mentioned hyperscalers, and sovereign AI. Maybe quickly define those.
Sure. Hyperscalers think the giant cloud providers like AWS, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, who operate massive data centers. Sovereign AI refers to nations building their own AI infrastructure and capabilities, often for strategic reasons.
Got it. So who's the target audience?
It's super diverse. Gamers, obviously individuals, esports teams, creators, data center customers, those hyperscalers, AI startups, big enterprises building AI factories, HPC research labs, then professional visualization folks, designers, architects, engineers, automotive car makers, suppliers, AV startups, robotics developers and companies, and increasingly governments pursuing those sovereign AI initiatives.
A very wide net, geographically.
They're global, but the key revenue spots in FY25 were the U.S., Singapore, Taiwan, and China, including Hong Kong. Those accounted for the lion's share.
Okay. So significant presence in Asia as well as the U.S.
Definitely. Which, of course, means they're exposed to regional economics and, importantly, geopolitical factors, especially around China trade dynamics.
Right. That China relationship is complex. Okay. Given this massive global scale, how do they actually run the business day to day? I know they don't own their own factories, right? The fabless model.
That's correct.
Yeah.
NVIDIA is famously fabless. They focus all their energy and resources on designing, R&D, marketing the chips. The actual physical manufacturing, they outsource that to specialized semiconductor foundries.
Like TSMC?
Primarily TSMC, yeah. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They use Samsung a bit too.
What are the pros and cons of being fabless?
Well, the big pros are agility, focusing capital on innovation instead of building hugely expensive factories or fabs, and getting access to the most advanced manufacturing processes from these specialists.
Sounds smart. The downsides?
The main risk is dependence on just a few outside suppliers, especially TSMC. That makes you vulnerable to supply chain disruptions, capacity issues, pricing pressure, maybe less control. And of course, the geopolitical sensitivity around Taiwan is a big factor there.
Dependence on Taiwan is a recurring theme. What else is key operationally?
Their intense focus on R&D. It's massive and continuous. $12.9 billion just in FY25. They hold over 8,700 patents. Global R&D centers, Vietnam, planned expansions in Shanghai, Taiwan. It's absolutely critical for staying ahead.
Constant innovation fuel.
Exactly. Strategic supply chain management is also huge. Managing those foundries, subcontractors, suppliers, securing capacity, managing costs, quality, mitigating risks. They talk about having an integrated supply chain driven by a single demand signal. They invest in foundry roadmaps, advanced packaging tech too.
Advanced packaging.
Yeah, how you put different chip components together, increasingly important for performance. And finally, cultivating that software ecosystem, especially CA. Continuously developing and supporting CU, AI enterprise, Omniverse, all the SDKs and libraries like cuDNN, DLSS. This makes the hardware much more valuable and creates that powerful developer lock-in we talked about. Things like DGX Cloud Lepton aim to make access easier. Their whole democratization of AI push, with NIMs and AI blueprints, ultimately sells more hardware by making AI easier to use.
So innovation, outsourcing manufacturing smartly, and building that sticky software moat. Okay, let's zoom out again. What are the big industries NVIDIA plays in, and who are they up against?
Right, industry context. They're in the massive global semiconductor industry, obviously. That market's growing fast, driven by AI, cloud, advanced cars, IoT, 5G, billions and billions globally. Within that, NVIDIA dominates the AI hardware market, AI accelerators, mostly GPUs. That submarket is exploding.
The AI chip gold rush.
Pretty much. They're also a huge player in data center solutions, another booming market thanks to AML demands. Gaming hardware is mature but still big and growing. And automotive tech 8S, autonomous driving that's ramping up fast too.
Okay, so who are the main competitors in those key battlegrounds?
It varies. In AI and data center GPUs, the main rivals are AMD with their Instinct GPUs and Intel with their Gaudi accelerators.
AMD and Intel, the traditional rivals.
Right. But then there's this really interesting dynamic with the hyperscalers, Google building TPUs, Amazon with Trainium and Inferentia, Microsoft's Maya, even Apple's Silicon. Their customers and potential competitors building their own custom chips.
Co-opetition.
Exactly. NVIDIA is trying to address that by opening up NVLink with this NVLink Fusion thing, letting others connect to their tech.
Interesting move. What about gaming and auto?
Gaming. It's still primarily AMD's Radeon GPUs as the main competitor. Long-standing battle there. Automotive is more fragmented. Intel's Mobileye, Qualcomm's Snapdragon Ride, Tesla doing its own FSD chip, Bosch. And in networking, despite buying Mellanox, they still compete with other networking gear companies.
A complex landscape indeed, especially that customer-competitor dynamic with the cloud giants. What about actual market share? How dominant is NVIDIA?
Extremely dominant in key areas. For AI accelerators and data center GPUs, estimates are usually somewhere between 70% and even up to 95%, depending on how you slice it. Let's say around 90% is a common figure.
90%, wow.
In the broader AI chip market, maybe closer to 85%. And in discrete gaming GPUs, they're typically around 80%, commanding leads.
Those are huge numbers. What gives them that edge? What are the core competitive advantages?
It comes down to a few key things. First, that sustained tech leadership and relentless innovation. Hopper, Blackwell, Rubin, that constant drumbeat. Second, and maybe most critical, the CUDA software ecosystem. It's the industry standard. The switching costs are incredibly high for developers deeply invested in it. That's a massive moat.
The CUDA mode.
Definitely. Third, that full-stack approach, optimized hardware, software, models working together. Simplifies things for customers. Fourth, strong strategic partnerships across the board, cloud, OEMs, software research. Fifth, powerful brand recognition and trust. And sixth, that crucial first-mover advantage they had in AI. Ultimately, the fight isn't just about hardware specs anymore. It's about the whole ecosystem, and CUD is NVIDIA's strongest defense.
So given all that, how strong is their economic moat, those sustainable advantages protecting them from rivals?
Qualitatively, it's definitely a wide economic moat. Sustainable advantages are there.
What are the sources of that moat?
Intangible assets, their IP, patents, the CUD ecosystem itself, creating those high switching costs. Network effects, the more developers use CUDA, the stronger it gets. Their strong brand and reputation.
Right.
And that first mover advantage in AI.
Seems pretty solid. How durable is it?
Generally seen as quite durable, mainly because of that tight hardware-software integration and the ecosystem's strength. But it's not impenetrable.
What are the threats?
Rising competition, especially from AMD and Intel, getting more serious about AI chips. Those custom silicon efforts by the hyperscalers chipping away at the edges. The long-term possibility of open-source alternatives to CUD, like AMD's ROCm, gaining traction. And geopolitical stuff, like U.S. export controls on China, which could potentially, ironically, help local Chinese competitors like Huawei if NVIDIA is restricted, though NVIDIA is making compliant chips to mitigate that.
So a wide moat, but they need to keep reinforcing it constantly.
Absolutely. Constant vigilance required.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's pivot to the financials in a bit more detail. What have the general historical trends looked like for NVIDIA?
The big story, especially recently, is just explosive growth and soaring profitability, almost entirely driven by that AI and data center demand.
The AI boom effect.
Totally. Revenue growth has been extraordinary. FY24 and FY25 were just off the charts.
Yeah.
Total revenue hit $130.5 billion in FY25, up 114% year over year. That followed 126% growth the year before. Their long-term growth rates are also super strong. They've captured a huge chunk of the AI infrastructure market.
And profitability, have margins kept up?
Oh, yeah. Profitability has expanded significantly, too. Gross margins are very high, 75% GAAP in FY25, up from around 72.7%, consistently in the mid-70s range recently.
75% gross margin, that's high for hardware.
It is. It shows serious pricing power, the premium people pay for their AI leadership, and that CEDA ecosystem value. Less price sensitivity there. Operating margins have also ballooned. Shows great operational leverage as revenue scales. GAAP operating income was $81.5 billion in FY25, up 147%. Operating margin in Q4 FY25 was around 61-62%.
Well, and net profit?
Net margin surged, too. JAT net income hit $72.9 billion in FY25, up 145%. Net profit margin in Q4 was around 55-56%. Just incredibly high profitability across the board right now.
Sustaining those margins has to be the challenge, though, right? With more competition coming.
Exactly. That's the key question. Can they keep that tech lead, and will demand stay this strong? Competition could definitely pressure margins down the line.
What about debt? Are they leveraged?
Historically, they've been pretty prudent. As of Jan 2025, long-term debt was around $8.5 billion, which sounds like a lot, but their debt-to-equity ratio was low, like 13%. So a conservative structure, lots of flexibility.
Okay, impressive numbers all around. What are the specific financial metrics that people watching NVIDIA focus on most closely?
Several key ones. Number one is probably data center revenue growth rate. That's the pulse of their core AI business.
The bellwether metric.
Absolutely. Then gross margin percentage tells you about pricing power and efficiency. Operating margin percentage, overall operational efficiency. R&D investment level, crucial for tracking their commitment to staying ahead technologically. Revenue growth in the other segments like gaming and auto shows diversification. Valuation metrics, of course, PE, PS, forward PE, trying to see if the stock price makes sense given the growth. And free cash flow shows financial health, resources for investment, or shareholder returns. But yeah, that data center growth number and their guidance for it. The market treats that as a major indicator for the whole AI industry's health.
Got it. And how does NVIDIA usually spend its money? Where does all that cash flow go? What's their capital allocation strategy?
It's definitely a growth-first philosophy. Reinvesting heavily back into the business is priority number one.
R&D mostly.
R&D gets a huge chunk, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fueling that innovation engine. Strategic acquisitions are another big use of capital, buying tech, talent, market access like Mellanox or those recent AI software startups.
Makes sense. What about returning cash to shareholders?
They do that too, primarily through share buybacks. They've had massive buyback programs, authorized like $25 billion, then another $50 billion announced. They returned $8.1 billion in Q4 FY25 through buybacks and dividends combined.
Mostly buybacks, though.
Seems to be the preference. They pay a small quarterly dividend, but the yield is tiny, especially after the stock split. The payout ratio is extremely low. Clearly, they prefer reinvesting or buying back stock over big dividend payouts right now. Some people question large buybacks for such a high-growth company, but that's their approach.
Interesting. Any other major uses of capital?
Yeah, they're also investing in big growth initiatives and infrastructure, like those plans mentioned for building out AI infrastructure within the U.S.
Okay, so reinvestment first, then buybacks, then everything else. Now, let's try to pull this all together. A SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats for NVIDIA.
Okay, let's do it. Strengths. First, dominant market leadership in AI data center GPUs, like we said, 80-90% plus. Second, that CUDA software ecosystem and the developer lock-in, huge entrenched advantage. Third, pioneering R&D and continuous innovation, that massive R&D spend. 27,000 plus patents, fast product cadence. Fourth, exceptional financial performance, high profitability, those crazy margins and revenue growth. Fifth, visionary tenured leadership in Jensen Huang. Sixth, powerful brand recognition and trust. Seventh, being a full-stack solutions provider. Eighth, strong strategic partnerships.
Pretty formidable list of strengths. What about the flip side? Weaknesses.
Okay, weaknesses. Heavy dependence on TSMC for manufacturing, maybe over 80%. Revenue concentration, almost 90% from the data center segment in FY25, makes them vulnerable if that market slows. Their premium product pricing could be a barrier for some or make them susceptible to cheaper rivals. The complexity of their software and products requires expertise, and they're exposed to the cyclical nature of the semiconductor and tech markets generally.
Right, the reliance on data center and TSMC seem like the big ones there. Okay, looking outwards now. What are the biggest Opportunities.
Huge opportunities, massive growth potential as enterprise generative AI adoption takes off. Still pretty early days for most companies. Expansion into new vertical markets, healthcare, finance, manufacturing, edge computing, and robotics. Their platforms like Jetson and Isaac are well positioned. Sovereign AI initiatives around the world create partnership opportunities. The industrial metaverse and digital twins via Omniverse that could be a $100 billion plus market eventually. Continued automotive market growth with the D-Drive platform. And just the ongoing advancement in AI models themselves, demanding ever more powerful compute, which plays right into their hands.
Lots of avenues for growth. And finally, the threats. What keeps them up at night?
Significant threats, too. Intensifying competition, AMD, Intel getting more aggressive, plus those hyperscaler custom silicon efforts, geopolitical tensions and export controls, especially U.S.-China, economic downturns hurting spending, supply chain disruptions beyond just TSMC, rapid technological obsolescence or maybe a disruptive shift like quantum computing long-term, potential antitrust scrutiny due to their market dominance, and the risk, however small it seems now, of a slowdown in AI adoption or an AI winter.
Okay, a really clear picture of their strategic position. Now, looking ahead more specifically, what are NVIDIA's key future prospects? What are the main drivers they're counting on for growth?
Their future is all about AI expanding everywhere. Their big strategic push is around this idea of AI factories, providing the whole infrastructure for making intelligence, essentially.
Wait, AI factories. Catch it?
Yeah. And they've established this NVIDIA rhythm, a yearly innovation cadence. So Blackwell is shipping now. Blackwell Ultra is coming late 2025, supposedly better for complex reasoning than the Vera Rubin architecture. Rubin Ultra GPU, Vera CPU hitting systems late 2026, more in 2027. That's expected to be a big leap, maybe lower cost too. They've even hinted at a Feynman generation after that.
Wow, they're laying out the roadmap years in advance.
Always looking ahead. Another huge focus is expanding and simplifying that software ecosystem. NVIDIA AI Enterprise. NVIDIA NIMs those inference microservices, making deployment easier. AI blueprints for specific industries, their OpenLlama Nemotron models, Omniverse for industrial digitalization, digital twins, robotics, things like Project GR0T for humanoids, Newton Physics Engine, Cosmos World Models, NVIDIA Dynamo for reasoning, QOpt for optimization, just tons of software initiatives.
Software. It's key to the strategy.
Absolutely. They're also focused on U.S. AI supercomputer manufacturing and partnering with governments on sovereign AI, advancing embodied intelligence, physical AI and robotics, autonomous vehicles, drug discovery, manufacturing, and even dipping their toes into quantum computing research.
An incredibly broad and ambitious set of initiatives. What are some specific things that could really kick their growth into higher gear, potential catalysts?
Several things. If Blackwell and Blackwell Ultra are commercial successes and adopted widely, that's huge. If enterprise AI adoption accelerates faster than expected, if they land major sovereign AI deals, big breakthroughs or market share gains in automotive or robotics building on partnerships like Toyota, Hyundai, if Omniverse really takes off and starts generating significant revenue, and of course, any favorable geopolitical or regulatory shifts could remove headwinds.
Okay. And what's the grand long-term vision NVIDIA is selling? Where do they see all this heading?
It's really bold. Their tagline is, solve problems that ordinary computers cannot. They see themselves at the heart of a new industrial revolution, where intelligence is the product. They talk about enabling AI factories that generate tokens, the currency of the AI age, fundamentally reshaping the $100 trillion global economy.
Reshaping the global economy, no small ambition.
Nope. They also talk about driving advances for big societal challenges, climate, healthcare. They envision a future where almost all of our experiences will be generative, AI creating our world. And a huge part of the next wave for them is robotics and industrial digitalization. Robots learning in simulation and Omniverse, powered by foundation models like GR0T, really focus on physical AI and digitizing the physical world.
A truly sweeping vision for the future. What's the general vibe from Wall Street analysts covering NVIDIA?
Overall, it's still very positive. The consensus rating is typically buy or strong buy.
Bulls are still running.
Mostly. The bullish arguments focus on the strong financials, the AI leadership, diversification efforts, strong cash position, saying they're uniquely positioned. Some even argue the valuation is reasonable given the growth.
But there must be bears, too. Or at least cautious voices.
Oh, yeah. The cautious themes revolve around whether this hypergrowth is sustainable. Can they keep beating earnings expectations by such wide margins? Concerns about intensifying competition, execution risks on all these ambitious plans, the impact of tariffs or export controls. general economic uncertainty. We did see a few analysts issue downgrades or trim price targets earlier in 2025, so it's not unanimous optimism. There are definitely questions being asked.
So mostly bullish, but with some real concerns bubbling under the surface. Okay, let's dig into those risks more specifically. What are the key ones, and importantly, what is NVIDIA doing to try and mitigate them?
Right, the risks, we can group them. Operational risks. That supply chain dependence on TSMC is huge. Manufacturing yields, complexity of new chips, market and financial risks. Intense competition, that revenue concentration in data center, cyclicality of the chip market, potential economic downturns, general market volatility, technological risks, pace of innovation, can they keep it up, risk of falling behind, product defects, security vulnerabilities, and the whole area of AI bias and responsible AI development. Regulatory and geopolitical risks, export controls, especially regarding China, potential antitrust scrutiny given their dominance, global political instability, and finally, ESG-related risks. Responsible AI development, as mentioned, and the environmental impact AI is very energy-intensive.
That's a pretty comprehensive list of potential pitfalls. How are they trying to manage these? What are the mitigation efforts?
They're tackling them on multiple fronts. For supply chain, they're working on diversification, using Samsung more, exploring domestic options, signing prepaid capacity deals to lock in supply. For market risks, they're pushing continuous innovation and diversification into auto, robotics, enterprise software to reduce reliance on just data centers. They're navigating export controls by designing compliant chips for markets like China and engaging with policymakers. They have an AI risk management framework to address responsible AI and bias issues. They keep strengthening the full-stack ecosystem, especially CEDA, to lock customers in, forging strategic partnerships, maintaining financial prudence with that strong balance sheet. And you could argue their long-term bets in automotive and robotics are a strategic hedge against the shifts in core markets, though those have their own risks.
Sounds like a very active strategic defense against a complex set of challenges.
Okay.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what are the absolute key takeaways, the critical things listeners should remember about NVIDIA?
Okay, key takeaways. NVIDIA's incredible transformation from graphics to an AI leader. The current overwhelming dominance of the data center segment driving their growth.
Yeah.
The strength of their economic moat, built largely on CUDA and sustained tech leadership. Their super ambitious growth strategies, the AI factories, that annual innovation rhythm pushing into new markets, but also the significant challenges. Competition, geopolitics, supply chain dependence.
And if you had to characterize their investment profile conceptually.
Strong growth story, obviously.
Yeah.
Highly dependent on continued innovation. Driven primarily by AI and data center trends right now. A market leader with a wide moat, but one that's being tested. Capital return focused on reinvestment and buybacks.
So, NVIDIA. Maybe the ultimate pick-and-shovel play for the AI gold rush, but also a company actively trying to design the mine and the tools. They're clearly in an amazing spot right now, but that key question remains. Can they sustain this incredible run and dominance long term? It's a fascinating case study in strategy and innovation, but definitely complex, definitely risky.
Precisely. Couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you for joining us on this really extensive deep dive into the world of NVIDIA. We truly hope this has given you, our listener, some valuable context and a much deeper understanding of this incredibly important company.
My pleasure. It was great digging into it.
And now, a final thought, something provocative for you to chew on. Given NVIDIA's absolutely central role in powering this AI revolution we're living through, what do you believe will be the most significant long-term impact of their vision, their technology, on the global economy, and maybe even on the balance of power within the tech industry itself? Definitely something worth pondering as AI continues to reshape just about everything.